Thank you for joining us. This is the first time, and I think in a very long time, that we've had elected officials specifically come speak to the GGBA. But maybe we can start off with some of the things that you've been dealing with or working with around small businesses, especially right now in light of COVID going on. I
Yeah.
know that's a big concern for folks.
Yep. So the timing of this, well, first of all, let me just take a step back. I know some of you, I don't know all of you, but a little by way of background, I got my start in government as a small business commissioner. I ran a small business for about a decade before I ran for the Board of Supervisors in 2008. And a lot of what I've always tried to focus on is just all of the um, I think, avoidable barriers that government places on small businesses. So when I was at City Hall, it was about trying to get rid of, dozens of fees that were nickeling and diming small businesses, trying to streamline the process. We set up the Office of Small Business and this idea of this vision of a one-stop shop for businesses to interact with. Still got a lot of work to do, but something I've always been passionate about. Now during COVID and pandemic, it goes without saying that virtually all small businesses are struggling dramatically. I have a couple of actually good pieces of news as of this moment. So we had this in the last couple of months, a $500 million small business grant program that some of you probably applied for. And we were excited for it until we got all the applications and realized that we literally were only able to fund 6% of the application came in. I was hearing from small businesses all over San Francisco just how frustrating that was. So a little bit of good news is we just had a breakthrough. It was just announced in the last few hours that we're going to be quadrupling that fund. So we're going from 500 million to over 2.1 billion additional dollars. So over 2.6 billion dollars of funding to this program, which basically means we can fund another 4 to 5 times as many small businesses that we were able to do before. And if I recall, if you have already submitted a grant for this program and you didn't get a grant in the first round, it will be resubmitted. But if you didn't apply in the first instance, you should definitely apply again. So I'm going to mention that. And then in addition to that, I know that we're also going to be moving forward another, I think it's about another $1 billion or so of small business tax cuts. So for those folks that were fortunate to get PPP or federal economic injury disaster loan funding, there are some tax implications of that, and we're going to be able to forgive some of the taxes on that. So all this being said, I would say by the end of the day, Tuesday, there will be stories in the newspapers about these different pots of money that are available, and you should definitely look into the details. And if you have any issues or questions, please let me know. Now, on top of that, and it's just totally coincidental that I am talking to you guys tonight, but I think tomorrow in the Chronicle, there's going to be a story about a bill that I am introducing very specifically. As a former small business advocate, I've thought, okay, this is a time where I've got to lean in. I'm going to be introducing a bill to require that 25% of all of state contracts need to go to small and local diverse businesses, specifically including LGBTQ businesses, but also, businesses for the African American community, Latinx community, API, women-owned businesses, all of those businesses that should be receiving help. And I'll also say, I had hoped that last year, Proposition 16, which was a measure that would have reversed the ban on affirmative action, was going to pass, because we used to, before Proposition 209 passed in 1996, were able to specifically target contracts to diverse, minority-owned, women-owned businesses, et cetera. And that ended in 1996. And it used to be, we had billions of dollars of contract money that would go to that. Well, I've decided even though Prop 16 didn't pass, we're introducing this bill. Maybe I'll say it to this group because I know you'll appreciate it, to get around those issues and figure out how to move forward literally a quarter of all of these contracts, which will be in the billions of dollars. So I'm really excited that the Cal California Black Chamber, the California Hispanic Chamber, and the California Asian Chamber are coming together as the main supporters of our bill because they represent literally hundreds of thousands of small businesses of the type that you represent. And we want to get you guys, access to those state contracts. So those are sort of the big things that I'm working for sort of in this area. Because of the nexus of your organization with the LGBT community, I want to mention a couple other things that I'm working on. So a few months ago with the former chair of the Black Caucus, we moved forward a bill that would require corporate boards in California with some of the largest companies to include diversity. And I mention this because we're not just talking about racial diversity or gender diversity, but we specifically included provisions around LGBTQ diversity. So if you look at the vast majority of the public companies in California, they are mostly filled on their board of directors with white straight men. And we wanted to mix that up. And so we specifically are saying to corporate California that you need to lift up the diversity of our communities. And that includes every single person on this call. If you are gay, or if you're a person of color, or if you're a woman, you will have an opportunity through this bill to basically your chances of being able to get appointed to a corporate board is probably going to increase, many times fold. And I just want to let you know about that because I helped to author the bill. But right at this moment is when the recruitment for those boards are happening. And so we want to help position smart business folks that represent diversity to get onto these corporate boards because that's opportunity for you. But we also know once we diversify these boards, it'll mean good things for our broader community. I mentioned two other bills I'm working on that have LGBTQ connections. One is a bill that deals with behavioral health. And, we know right now, not only is mental health just an incredible challenge for everybody, but behavioral health as a field deals with also addiction issues and kind of what we're grappling with on our streets, what a lot of different communities of diversity are grappling with as we speak. One of the challenges around grappling with mental health and substance abuse and addiction is that we do not have the workforce to help provide the services into that world. And we don't have a diverse workforce, particularly when it comes to LGBTQ folks. So I have a bill to basically increase the pipeline for mental health and behavioral health. We're working with LGBT advocates, and I thought I'd mention that. So I can talk for a long time because that's what politicians do, but love to, ask you guys, what else can we be doing in Sacramento and at City Hall to be helping? So Luis, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Perfect, David. Thank you so much. As always, you're an amazing ally to the community, and we love having you here. That's a lot that you've dropped on us that I don't think we knew was coming.
It's not even in the news yet. I'm giving you stuff that, I almost should say, don't tweet it yet, but my bill will be out tomorrow. And this news around the money coming down, it'll be out in the next 24 hours. So, but you heard it first.
So just to clarify, there was a question in the chat. For those that may not know, that grant process, that was for California as a whole, small businesses, not just San Francisco, correct? We just want to verify that. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, so the first grant that went out, it was for $500 million. We thought, oh, that's great. It's a lot of money. And it was so oversubscribed that those of us in the legislature said, hey, Governor, we got to get more money into this pot. And I will also say, the most sophisticated business interests knew the money was coming and they were able to apply, but smaller businesses, diverse businesses, just, they didn't have the time, they didn't learn about it fast enough. So we're doing everything we can to get the word out.
Gotcha. Okay, so we have actually a question that was submitted. Members asking, can you apply regardless if you had for PPP? And who are the best candidates for that?
So that's a good question. I think the answer is you can apply. I have to admit, and I realize I don't know if anyone from my staff is on this call. We can get you information about the qualifications, but the link that you put in the website is correct. So the first round of applications closed and they ran out of money. So basically what I'm telling you is we're dumping quadruple the amount of money into another round that you guys will all be able to apply for. And it's not, there's going to be an application deadline for when you have to apply. So you don't have to stress that you have to get your application in immediately, but you need to look out for the application date so you're not late in submitting it.
Great. And then as far as the 25% spend for state contracts,
yeah.
Do you have a general idea of how that'll be received, or what's going to be the reception to that, do you think?
Well, it's interesting. And I'm going to say this because this is like a random factoid, but the groups I was working with came up with this idea for this bill because Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2006, actually through executive order, was trying to get more funds to small businesses. And he, by executive order, said to his agencies, we should aspire to have 25% of our contracts go to small businesses. So we put that executive order out. And what we discovered was it was ignored. And governor after governor, including our more recent Democratic governors, just didn't pay attention to small businesses. So we basically are saying, okay, we're gonna do this, but we're gonna do it for real. We want all 231 state agencies that have pots of money. We've got a $240 billion government and they put out lots of contracts. We want to make it very clear that a chunk of those contracts need to go to local, small, and diverse businesses. So that's the point of this. I think it's going to be pretty well received, but literally, you guys are the first San Francisco constituencies to know I'm introducing this bill. The public doesn't know until the article comes out, I think tomorrow in the Chronicle, and we're starting the conversation literally in the next 12 hours.
All right. Well, I have another favorite that I know that you've heard in the past, but it's been an ongoing issue. Many members have inquired about potential initiatives for dealing with the homelessness crisis and the drug crisis. Many small businesses are also being affected in that manner. But I guess what could you tell us in that area?
So I can tell you a few things. So the mental health workforce bill I mentioned, in part, we're introducing that because the 40% of folks on our streets who are chronically homeless, and these are the folks that when you think of a person on the streets who's homeless, you think of someone who's got substance abuse addictions, someone who has mental health challenges. What I've discovered as I've been digging into this is we have literally 10% of the workforce that we need. In other words, we could have 10 times the number of substance abuse caseworkers, mental health caseworkers on our streets because the need is that intense. And so that's why I'm doing that particular bill. And then just today, and I'm going to actually, while we're talking, I'm going to try to multitask and pull the Sacramento Bee article about a major homelessness bill that I just introduced today. I'm just going to my Twitter and pulling up the article. So part of the reason why we have the worst homelessness crisis in our state's history, and this is true not just for San Francisco, but in California, is most cities, most counties, state agencies literally do not have a plan to end homelessness. Or put a different way, everyone says, yeah, we got to do something about homelessness, but we literally cannot articulate what do we have to do to end homelessness? If you have 150,000 people on the streets around the state, say you got 7,000 to 8,000 people on the streets in San Francisco, what are the concrete steps that we need to take year by year to address it? Most cities don't have a multi-year plan to end homelessness. And so I've introduced a bill to require every jurisdiction in the state, every county, to not only articulate a plan, but to figure out what is the gap between what they're currently doing and what they're not doing. And I'm going to tell you this, while San Francisco does a lot around homelessness, we could be doing more. We could be doing better with the money we have. And there are a lot of cities around us that aren't doing a damn thing around homelessness. And so a lot of those folks come to our city. And so our bill literally would create a legal mandate that requires every jurisdiction in the state, including the 9 counties in the Bay, including the 101 cities in the Bay, to each have a plan in coordination with each other. And my bill requires those cities to, based on the resources they have, to move forward on their planning, actually getting it done. We've never had sort of a legal mandate to force cities to address homelessness. And so again, the work doesn't happen. So I'm starting this debate as of 12 hours ago about how we require cities to do this work. And that's going to be a pretty spicy, fun discussion that we have. In fact, in an hour, I'm on the phone with the mayors of the largest cities in California to explain why I'm going to make them do this. So this conversation is ongoing.
That's awesome. And then finally, just before we let you go, I got to ask, what can our chamber and other LGBT chambers do to support that 25% contract spend? How can we help you?
I would love, Luis, I will make sure my staff gets to you the fact sheet about the bill. We would be happy for you to join our growing coalition of business associations that support it. I would also say, keep letting us know what we need to do. I work very, very closely with Senator Wiener, and he's got a number of bills sort of in the space. You'll probably hear from him later today, but want to just hear from you at the grassroots level of what's going on. I will tell you, during the first couple of months of the pandemic, probably every fourth, my phones were just being blown up from people with need. And probably every fourth call was from a small business owner or a co-founder of a company that was really hurting. And knowing specifically what's helpful, I heard a lot of feedback from small businesses when PPP loan money was coming out that you guys were completely unable to access that money. And that's what led us to the state conversation. But getting that direct feedback from you is invaluable, super, super helpful. So just want to just appreciate that ahead of time and just let us know what we need to do to help.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Assembly Member. We'll definitely have you back at sometime in the near future.
Sure thing. And what I'm going to put a couple things in the chat before I leave. So I'll go on mute, but just let us know, and good to see everybody.
Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
So thanks for all that great information. I am super excited to introduce our next speaker. He is our senator from District 11, which encompasses San Francisco and parts of San Mateo, and I may be forgetting other parts, but I'm very happy to introduce Senator Scott Wiener to the GGBA. How are you, Senator?
Oh, hi, Luis. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Thank you.
Doing good. Yeah, we'd love to hear what you've been up to in regards to anything around small business or COVID-19. I know you've been plugging away and doing a lot of good work, so I'd love to share with the group.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for having us, and thank you for the work that you do. I think there are a number of things happening this year, and a lot of work is being done through the budget. I'm sure David, talked about at the end of January, passing the extension of the eviction moratorium that David authored, and then also
I didn't even do that, Scott. So
yeah, I'm plugging you, Assemblymember. And then allocating the federal funds we receive for rent relief to create a program where landlords can get 80% of their back rent in exchange for waiving the other 20%, and then the tenant can be left with no rent debt, because that's a huge problem in terms of recovering, either having people lose their housing or come out of this with tens of thousands of dollars in back rent that they owe and will never be able to pay off. It's just not how you recover economically. And so that was a good step. And today, the legislature and the governor announced a deal on relief for small businesses and individuals. And for small businesses, it's increasing the pot for these grants up to $25,000 that small businesses can tap into, as well as allowing people, or making sure that people can deduct your forgivable PPP loans. So you're not getting your PPP loans from the federal government, getting it forgiven, and having to pay state tax on it. There's also a number of items in there about just relief to individuals and low-income families. So we're trying to do what we can to help both small businesses and individuals. We don't have the same latitude that the federal government has, since federal government can deficit spend and print money, which we can't do. but we are doing the best that we can under difficult circumstances. We're obviously also very focused on vaccine distribution, which I really do think is going to continue to accelerate. Just over the last 3 weeks, we've really turned things around, and California is now comparing well with other states. And as we get more supply, which is going to happen over the next few months, I think we're going to be in a much better place. So I'm optimistic, despite all the doomsday negativity, nitpicking everything about the vaccine and the variants. The news overall is extremely good, and I see us turning things around over the course of this year. So in terms of what I'm focused on this year, housing, as always, which is so essential for our success as a community, economically and otherwise. And I have several bills this year to try to ramp up housing production, to try to remove some barriers that we experience in many communities in the state, and to do a better job collecting data around how our housing laws are being implemented, which we don't really have the best comprehensive data now, so we want to improve that. And also we're doing some work around trying to get more housing that is targeted towards our most at-risk youth who are exiting homelessness, foster care, or the criminal justice system. Also very focused, as I am always, but particularly this year, on mental health and addiction. Last year, we were able to pass a significant law that I authored to force insurance companies to cover a lot more mental health treatment and care than they were doing before, and giving more control to physicians and providers about what is medically necessary in terms of mental health and addiction treatment. And this year, we're building on that in a few ways. We're wanting to make sure that when people get mental health care, that they can get timely appointments and timely follow-up appointments. It's a big problem for people. They're able to get an appointment and they can't get their second appointment for 2 months. And we really want to get people early before they become homeless, and get them the help and the care that they need. I am, again, trying to pass a safe consumption site legislation to allow San Francisco, Oakland, and LA to pilot a safe consumption site where people can go, and so they're using in a safe, healthy indoor space instead of doing it on the streets or in front of someone's business or home or in the park. These centers are successful around the world, in Europe, Australia, and Canada, where they've been used for a long time. They help get a lot of people into recovery programs. They reduce infections. They reduce overdoses. They've never had an overdose death ever. As you know, we have I think nearly 700 overdose deaths in San Francisco in 2020, which was a huge spike and a record. And so we need to try some new things. So we want to get San Francisco permission from the state to do that. Also have some legislation around some innovative treatments for meth addiction. There's a big focus on, understandably, on opioids, which are a huge problem. Meth is also a huge problem in San Francisco and elsewhere. And probably the most promising treatment for it is something called contingency management, which is where you provide financial incentives for people to get sober and stay sober, is arguably illegal in California. The VA has been doing it for a decade. It works really well with people. And we want to be able to scale that up and help people get into recovery from meth addiction. We're also have legislation that we'll be introducing, I believe, tomorrow to decriminalize psychedelic drugs. Psychedelics are, there's an increasing strong evidence that psychedelics can be a hugely impactful treatment for mental health conditions, particularly PTSD, anxiety, and a few others. We have a lot of veterans groups in particular that are helping veterans with PTSD use psychedelics to get healthy. And so we want to make sure that people can have that access here. And then we are on the small business front. You may have seen I recently introduced Senate Bill 314, which makes some changes to California's alcohol laws in ways that will be beneficial to our restaurants and bars and live music venues, to make permanent the outdoor seating arrangements, allowing cities to continue to do that if they choose, which has been, I think, very popular and successful. Getting rid of some arbitrary restrictions that restaurants and bars face, making it easier for them to share space with other small businesses, which is difficult or impossible. Now creating a new kind of liquor license for live music venues, which currently can only get a restaurant liquor license, which means they have to build out a full expensive restaurant kitchen, even if they're not serving food. So we're going to create their own for them. And also putting a 6-month limit on protests and appeals to liquor licenses so that new business, as we come out of this pandemic, we want the businesses that are hanging on to be able to get back up on their feet. And for the ones that have closed, we want new businesses to be able to go there quickly. And we don't want them to have to spend 2 or 3 years in hearings and appeals on their liquor license. So that's an important bill, and hopefully we'll be able to move it forward. So those are a few things that we're working on this year. There are others, but I'll stop there.
Of course, I was muted. You have a full plate, of course, as you've mentioned. Some of the I've been seeing a reoccurrence in this question. Some of our members wanted to know, understandably, because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the exodus, so to speak, are there any concerns about high wage workers leaving the Bay Area, San Francisco? What is your read on that?
I think there's a lot of hot takes about what is going to be permanent post-COVID. And as we know, people love to write San Francisco's obituary. It's like the national pastime. San Francisco is dying, California is dying, everything is, and they've done it so many times. And San Francisco always comes back, and often comes back stronger than before. Same with California, where they wrote California in the early 90s when the military bases closed. California was dead, it was over. Well, it wasn't. And San Francisco, after the dot-com boom, was done. Well, it wasn't. So I think San Francisco is going to be fine. We're going through difficult times. I mean, the budget's going to be a problem. People, the whole remote work thing, I think, has been really overstated. I do think there will be more remote work than before. There'll be more flexibility. But this whole idea that everyone's going to be permanently working from home, I think it's just wrong. And even when Salesforce announced what it was doing, that got totally misrepresented in the press. So when you read the headline, it's like you would think Salesforce was like evaporating its offices and everyone was permanently working from home. Well, that's false. Right there, if there's a range, some people will be working 5 days a week in the office, some 2 or 3, some 1, but everyone's going to be in the office probably on average 2 or 3 days a week. So yes, it's less office, but they're still there. And so I think there's a lot of predictions that may not turn out to be accurate. There also, I saw some postal data came out today about where the people leaving San Francisco were going, because the post office has forwarding instructions. And lo and behold, the vast majority of people leaving San Francisco were relocating in other parts of the Bay Area, including Alameda County and Marin County or Sonoma County or Contra Costa County. And some of that might be permanent. There might be people who they were planning at some point to move to the East Bay because they wanted a yard for their kids, and maybe this accelerated. Some people it's temporary. I know people who are living up in Sonoma, have been in Sonoma County, maybe because they have a second home up there since the pandemic started. So they probably forwarded their mail there, and it looks like they've relocated. They're coming back. People who went to Tahoe who are coming back. So I think San Francisco is a place where people always come and go here. We always have turnover here in population. And this probably accelerated some of that. But there are also, I know people who are moving into the city. It's like, oh, good, the rent dropped some. Now's a good time for me to move. I know someone who they moved from the East Coast and were living in Oakland. They had their kid, and then the pandemic hit and the rents dropped, and they moved into San Francisco with their kid. So they did the opposite of what we normally expect when people have a kid. So again, I'm not suggesting there aren't going to be problems. And I think we will have some revenue struggles and I think there are businesses that are going to scale back their physical presence. But if office rents start dropping because vacancy rates are higher, well, guess what that's going to mean? That more startups and small businesses and nonprofits are going to be able to actually afford office space in San Francisco. It was getting so bad with the pressure on commercial rents for the pandemic that, as you probably know, law firms were leaving San Francisco because they couldn't afford it anymore, right? Like the prototypical downtown tenant, a law firm, couldn't afford it anymore and were moving to the East Bay or wherever. And so I'm optimistic about the future of the city. Like when I look at like nightlife, right? Like some of the clubs like the Stud, which needs to find a new place. And I always thought they would eventually, these are very strong, resilient people. They're going to find a place. Well, now I'm really optimistic they're going to find the place because there's just a lot more available and they're going to have more options at better rent. And so, I feel good about the future of our city, even though it's going to be, painful for a while.
Another question submitted by one of our members, specifically towards us, the state fund and workers' comp is, are you aware of any other payment deferral coming up? I guess recently they announced that they're going to start cancellations again as of January 1st.
Can you say the first part again? I couldn't hear the first part.
So it's asking if you know any information on the state fund, workers' comp.
Oh, workers' comp.
Yeah.
I don't, but I don't know if Zara introduced this up before. Zara Haji in my office is here, and we're happy to look into that and get you information. So, maybe Zara can put your information in the chat box.
Sounds good.
Perfect. That's great. Well, as always, Senator, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. We look forward to having you back again. We're just thrilled to have you guys here because this is the first time we've had electeds come to speak to our LGBT businesses in quite a long time. And so it's always great to see your faces. And for folks who don't know, Scott is our openly gay senator. So we're happy to have representation.
He's so gay.
He's so gay.
And Tony, I just saw you there. Congratulations on your new role.
Thank you, Scott. Good to see you.
I live right by Lyric now. I used to live on the same block as Lyric.
I love it. I'm there till June until we get a permanent president, which we just started the search yesterday.
Okay, that's great.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks again.
And thank you.
As mentioned, if we have any follow-up questions, we'll shoot them over to Zara. And with that, it looks like our next speaker's here. I am equally excited to introduce our District 8 supervisor here in San Francisco, Rafael Mandelman. How are you tonight?
Also so gay, so gay.
We're a big gay happy family here, so this is great.
I'm here with my legislative aide, Tom Temprano, extremely gay.
Oh, very gay as well.
Yeah.
The senator was mentioning some stomping grounds, and I guarantee you Tom has been to those. Stud. He plugged the stud. He plugged the stud.
My goodness.
Oh, okay, good. Yes.
We were just talking about how even though there's been an exodus, that in some ways that's a good opportunity for places like the Stud that we're looking for a new home, and hopefully with the dropping rents and commercial spaces, maybe one of those might be a good fit for them. But Rafi, what have you been up to? What kinds of things have you been working on?
Oh my gosh, so much. There's too much to talk about. Right now, everything is COVID all the time, except for all the other stuff we have to do, which still needs to get done. I think COVID, I'm so proud of San Francisco in a lot of ways for the response that we've had. If you look back to where we were a year ago and think about what could have happened differently from a public health perspective, if we had not responded quickly, and if we had not, put the data, the science, and the facts at the forefront, this could have been a lot worse. We have approaching 400 people who've died in San Francisco. It could still be, unfortunately, much worse. So I think there's many things to take pride in. I think, the impact of this pandemic on small business has been horrendous. And I've worked a lot over the last year to try and help address that. I was on the Economic Recovery Task Force. I've been involved in the shared spaces conversations from the beginning, trying to provide support for city staff as they've tried to unravel, bring out this program without additional support. So there's a lot of people working extra hard, doing regular jobs and doing these jobs to make the shared spaces program happen. We did have a push in the last budget at trying to get some additional budget resources for shared spaces, which, for the infrastructure to make sure to get quicker responses to people who are trying to do shared spaces. And unfortunately, that was not prioritized to the extent that I would have liked to see it. We were able to get a little bit of extra money in our local district budget to support provide a little support for the shared spaces on Valencia and in the Castro, which have been phenomenal. I think right now we're working with the mayor's office and city departments to think about how to make some of what we learned about creative uses of right-of-way and sidewalks survive into the future. I think we had a parklet program before the pandemic, and it was lovely. It was also kind of weird. We would require property owners to pay to install these parklets, and then they couldn't use those parklets for their adjacent business, which was, I know, annoying to them. Now we have these parklets that are totally private, entirely for the benefit of the adjacent business. In some ways wonderful. In another way, there is, I think, over the long term, a thought about, well, how do we make sure that there is a public benefit to this? And so that's kind of some of what we're thinking through and trying to be helpful with. So I'm anticipating that there will be a proposal coming from the mayor, and I hope from me as well, around that in the next month or so. We've been encouraging the mayor and working with colleagues to get as much fee relief, tax relief, relief of all kinds. It's not enough for the businesses, but at least taking that burden off is important to maybe not worry about that city fee. And I think we're also, thinking about long term. We worked with Supervisor Peskin on waiving the sidewalk and chairs fees through 2022. I'm kind of interested in, do sidewalk, tables and chairs fees, make so much sense beyond 2022, particularly as we make it hard for businesses in other ways. So I think we're looking to, early on in the pandemic, I wrote an op-ed with Ben Blyman from the Bar Alliance, small business guy, on kind of how the pandemic maybe afforded us an opportunity to solve or address some of the challenges small businesses have been facing for a long time in San Francisco. And we've done, some of that. Prop H did streamlining for small businesses that we talked about for a long time. Tom and I had actually done some of the items that were in Prop H for upper market to make it easier for new small businesses and arts organizations to go into vacant storefronts. But now that's, Prop H is significantly bigger than our little effort. So many different things there. Doing a lot on transportation. I'm the new chair of our county transportation authority. For those of you who rely on public transportation, it's a disaster in San Francisco right now. Many folks have lost the service that they relied on, particularly folks who live in the hills in my district and Supervisor Melgar's district. So that's been really tough. And then just, capacity limitations, just mean that the transit system that I felt needed a lot of work a year ago is really in need of work now. And we have to think both about rebuilding to where we were a year ago. And then also we have this opportunity with the Biden administration to maybe think about moving some of these larger projects of regional significance, like our downtown extension, like our second tunnel, and like even some of the thinking about central subway extension further than Chinatown, an additional rail, something or other, maybe on the west side. There's that's a 50-year project. It'll, happen maybe before Tom is, 100. But if we don't start the conversations now and push for money at every opportunity, federal money at every opportunity like now, we definitely won't get there. So that's the thing. And then I continue to believe that, for residents and businesses in San Francisco before the pandemic and in the pandemic, the situation of our unhoused neighbors, they're not having a place to be, the significant behavioral health issues that afflict many of them, the substance use issues that many are struggling with, that these are top of mind for a lot of residents and a lot of small businesses. And so I continue to focus a lot of my energy on trying to address those. We've proposed what we're calling a place for all, which would basically guarantee that every unhoused person who's willing to come in off the sidewalk can at least come to a shelter, or at the very least can come to a regulated, managed, and safe site for tents or tough sheds or pods. It is not exactly a right to shelter, but it is better than what we have now, I think. And that should be the bare minimum of what we do for people in a civilized society. Offer folks a shower, 3 meals a day, safety and security, lighting, that kind of stuff. I've been pushing for better responses to the meth crisis. I co-chaired the meth task force. The meth task force proposed street crisis response teams that worked its way into mental health SF. And then we put that supervisors Ronan and Haney and the mayor and I all worked together to get that into this year's budget. And so they're rolling out the street crisis response teams. The first one started in the Tenderloin. The second one has started work in Mission Castro. Working on other aspects of behavioral health response. We do not have enough placements for people with serious mental health needs. Many, right now, folks who are conserved. I've been an advocate for conservatorship. And I think it has its place, but many of the folks who are conserved now in San Francisco, we don't have a bed for them. We don't conserve them, or if we do conserve them, we send them to Southern California. So we have a real, lack of appropriate facilities for people with significant behavioral health issues. And that's been a real priority for me in budget conversations and otherwise. And I think I've, filibustered enough. I can take questions.
One of the questions that's come up a couple of times in light of, and you and I had spoken earlier about this, was in light of the recent allegations and corruption that's gone on in City Hall. We do have members that do business with the city, they're vendors, and they're just concerned and wanting to make sure that they can still go through a fair process when the business is looking at contracts. And I guess we were just looking for thoughts on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very alarming. It's troubling to think that folks have been operating in a corrupt way for many, many years, and that this has just been going on. I do have a lot of confidence in our city controller, Ben Rosenfield. I have a lot of confidence in Dennis Herrera. They are doing, sort of top to bottom review of the different departments and of the processes and figuring out what went wrong where and making recommendations. And members of the Board of Supervisors have been introducing legislation based on their recommendations. I think that Carmen Chiu as city administrator is an excellent choice. She is absolutely I don't like saying straight shooter because a queer shooter. But she is forthright and transparent and honest, and I think a really good person to be overseeing, the departments that she's going to oversee in that role, and will be a really good person to help think through, how to restore trust and make city contracting make more sense. Aside from the issues of just corruption, it is so complicated to try and do business with the city and county of San Francisco. We have so many requirements, which are not to the benefit of our small businesses that might want to do work with us, but also isn't to the benefit of the city. We have so many people who pass up the opportunity to do business with the city, who don't bid on work. We have, Tom and I would very much like to be able to use MailChimp we can't use MailChimp because, MailChimp to get a contract would have to, decide that it really, really wants to work for San Francisco and wants to work for San Francisco so much that it's going to go through all the hoops to happen. And because they're not going to do that, we can't, purchase a MailChimp account for my office. I think that's crazy. So I've been convening a little group of folks from the different departments, the city administrator's office. We were working with Naomi while Naomi was around, and now we'll continue working with Carmen, but to think about ways that we can make city contracting make a little bit more sense. And if folks have ideas for us, Tom Temprano will put his email into the chat. Tom Temprano will probably forward that on to Aaron Mundy, who's helping me with city contracting stuff. But feel free to share your ideas. Would love to hear them. Happy to meet with folks, all that stuff.
Awesome. One of the other things that folks had kind of talked about were the follow through. For example, 311, people call 311 in the city to address various issues. With small businesses might call 311 to either address a homeless issue, or in some instances, there have been folks reporting vendors that might not be licensed, but they didn't receive follow through. Is that, I guess the question from the member is that something that should be occurring? Because my understanding is that this particular member did not get any follow through and has no idea what the status is.
We hear this too often about 311. A couple of years ago, there was a controller's analysis of 311 and how it was doing. And I think very much in response to issues like this. I think that came out just about the time I joined the Board of Supervisors. I would love to do another update on sort of update analysis of 311 and how it's working and where it's not working. We have a very long to-do list right now, but I would hope, and I'm happy to be reminded by folks to, Mandelman, you said back in, February of 2021, you were going to do this. When are you going to do it? But I would like to do, because 311 was such a great innovation when Newsom brought it on, and was such a cool idea that you can access, your government in that way. And also 311 can be such a useful tool for government in being more effective by measuring what are we hearing about, and we should be using it effectively. And I have I don't know that the public is confident that 311 is as responsive as it should be, and that we are using the data we're gathering from 311 as effectively as we might. So I think it would be very good to get the controller, when he and his team climb out of the COVID hole that they're in, because they're doing all this work related to COVID. And I have a whole long to-do list of things I want them to look at, to get them looking at this again and maybe have a hearing on it.
Perfect. And then finally, you had mentioned at the beginning fighting for some funds within the budget. Are there any other particular areas that either affect small business or LGBT areas that you're pushing for in the city's budget this go around? I think that the biggest and most important thing that the city and county of San Francisco could do as a county that would benefit small businesses and would benefit residents is to figure out how to address the needs, as I said, of people with behavioral health challenges. I hear from so many people who have small businesses in the Castro who are regularly bolting their doors because they see that guy coming and they know it's not going to be good. The number of windows that get broken in the Castro, not because someone is going to break in, but because someone is high and it seems in whatever state that they are, like breaking that window is a good idea. We have got to do better. And I think San Francisco has an opportunity. Like, we have all this public health genius here. We are committed to humane responses to illness. We don't want to incarcerate people, but if we're going to be, not sending people off to state hospitals, which we can't because the state hospitals are closed, and not putting people in jail, we do need therapeutic environments for people, and we just don't have
anywhere near the number of those that we need. And the state has said very clearly, you counties are responsible for mental illness, and you are responsible for crime. If we can, I think, make a serious dent on both those things by investing in treatment, at all the levels of treatment that folks need. And of course, moving people to the least restrictive environment we can have them, but having more restrictive environments as we need them for people at different points in their life. That's what I really want to work on if I get, a full 6 years on this board. And it'll take a lot of money. And I think if we could solve that or move closer to solving it, I think it would make this city so much more attractive for people who want to live here, people who want to do business here. It really is, I think, the issue of our moment.
Well, I thank you so much for joining us. If we have any questions, we'll definitely reach out to Tom and to Aaron. If for those of you who aren't aware, Supervisor Mandelman regularly does tour his district and visits with constituents, so say hello to him from 6 feet away when you see him around. And once again, thank you guys both for being here. We really appreciate it, and we hope to have you guys back sometime soon.
Happy to come back anytime. If you email, I put my email in the chat. I would love to have you email me. If you email me, always put Tom or Aaron or someone else in the office on those emails, because my inbox gets hundreds of emails a day and I miss a lot. We don't have the volunteers or interns who we would normally rely on because of COVID. So please do CC multiple people. And I was out in Noe Valley today. I do get out. I love it when people come up and say, "Aren't you the supervisor? I got a phone stick with you." So come up and tell me what you're upset about or what you're happy about next time you see me.
Well, great. Thanks again. Thank you for attending. And it was good to see you, Tom. Next, we'll just kind of let you guys in on some events that are coming up.
So, Luis, before
yeah.
you do that,
Sure.
I just want to thank Luis for coordinating this tonight. He's one of our newest board members. He joined us in September, and he has just been a rock star, and I just appreciate it. And so I want to thank him for making this happen tonight. And it was very educational, and I think we have a lot of things to share with our members too. So thank you, Luis.
Thank you. It wasn't expected. You could always interrupt for thanks. Alrighty, so we just wanted to let you guys know of some upcoming events with the GGBA. On March 9th for our Make Contact event, we have a Zoom makeover, up-level your online screen presence with Shelley Golden. And I'm looking forward to this event because anything to spice up all the Zooms that, we have to participate in. I know some of us are having Zoom fatigue, but that'll be on March 9th from 5:30 to 6:30. And I would actually, is Crystal still on? Yeah, I'd love Crystal to talk about Power Lunch that's coming up in May. It's our major annual event of the year. So Crystal.
Thanks, Louise. Yes, Power Lunch 2021 is slated for May 26th. We'll be doing it virtually this year, of course. We found a wonderful platform to work on. It's going to enable us to enable our members to set up one-to-ones with people throughout the event, pick and choose what sessions they want to go to, create their own agenda for the day, even have a booth to be an exhibitor. So we're looking forward to it. We should be announcing more details next week. So stay tuned. And if you want to be a part of it, let me know. This event always takes lots of people. So it's an easy way to get involved with the organization.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then finally, coming up in April, we have our, let's see here, our new member orientation. I've got like a million screens up. I apologize. Michael knows how that goes. But yeah, for those of you who just want to get together and talk more about the GGBA, for our new members who want an introduction and learn simple ways on how to grow your business and relationships, we'd love to see you there as well. And keep an eye out for our newsletter and social media posts, because things pop up all the time. New events that when we grab somebody who we'd love to share with you, we want to get them in front of you right away. But with that, we hope that you had a good evening here with us, that you learned a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at policy@ggba.com. I will also put it in the chat, and we'll try to get those questions answered for you, even if the electeds weren't able to answer them during our call. But with that, I hope everyone has a good night.
Thank you, Luis. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
amazing.
See you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye-bye.
Congrats.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Luis.